Hey pre-calc, today we're going to be talking about 2 for day 1, zeros of polynomial functions. This is a new topic for you guys, and it's basically determining if we're given a polynomial, how can we figure out possible zeros of that polynomial. So we can use a theorem. We can use the rational zero theorem. To solve for zeros when you can't just factor. So like quadratic, you could just factor it real quick, see if it factors. It's quick and easy, but for bigger polynomials, it's just a pain in the butt. So we can use what's called the rational zero theorem. The theorem says we can look at the constant So constant, remember, that's going to be at the very end of a polynomial. It's just a number with no variable. So we can look at the constant and leading coefficient. And divide their factors. So what that looks like is leading coefficients, or the factors of the constant in the numerator, factors of constant, and then you divide that by factors of the leading coefficient. And what you're left with is possible zeros. So if there's any rational zeros, if there are any rational zeros, they will be in that list. And we're not going to do this today, but we will later. You can use synthetic division to determine which are actual zeros. And then we're going to wait to do that. Right now we're just going to focus on determining the zeros, because that's kind of the first step. So let's do a couple examples. So list all possible zeros of the function. That's all we're going to do. And we'll just do 2 examples. So for the first one, let's have our function be g of x equals x to the 4th plus 4x cubed minus 12x minus 9. Alright, so to determine the possible real zeros, we take the factors of the constant, which is -9, and you can just think of it as +9 because it doesn't matter. It could be either positive or negative. And we're going to divide that by factors of the leading coefficient, and this one's going to be easier because the leading coefficient is 1. Alright, so what are our factors of 9? So we got plus or minus 1, right, because 1 times 9, -1 times -9. We've got 3 times 3, and then we have 9. And then factors of 1 are just 1. And then we simplify. So 1 divided by 1, right, plus or minus 3 divided by 1, and plus or minus 9 divided by 1. And that's it. So +1, -1, +3, -3, +9, -9 are all the possible zeros of this function. And that's it. That's the easy part. We'll get to the harder part later this week. Now, if the leading coefficient's not 1, you do the same thing. So let's do h of x equals 3x cubed minus 7x squared minus 22x plus 8. So factors of the constant. So factors of 8 divided by factors of 3. And maybe some of you are realizing there's going to be a lot more. So 8, and if you want, you can just put plus or minus in front of the whole thing, so you don't have to write it every time, but just make sure you know it applies to every single number. So factors of 8, that's 1, 2, 4, and 8. Then for 3, it's just 1 and 3. But here, we've got more potential zeros, because we have to simplify. So go in this order first, so 1 divided by 1, so we have plus or minus 1, 2 divided by 1, 4 divided by 1, and 8 divided by 1. But then we also have this 3, so that means we have plus or minus 1/3, and leave it as a fraction, plus or minus 2/3. I'm going to run out of room, so I'm going to have to continue below, plus or minus 4/3, and plus or minus 8/3. So you'll see when there's a leading coefficient that's not 1, there are a lot more factors. If any of those simplified, so say this was a 6 and not an 8, right? 6 divided by 3 is 2, but we already listed 2, so you don't need to repeat it again. But yeah. So that is how we list how many possible zeros, listing all of the possible zeros of a function.